one-day cruise on the Lane Victory is the most exciting tourist attraction in America, and it only happens in Los Angeles.
Totally unique, different.
Absolutely thrilling. Excitement for the whole family.
Make your reservation today by calling 1-800-595-4849 or go online to lanevictory.org. Do it today. In World War II, over 7,000 American merchant marine sailors lost their lives due to enemy action, and in 1942, over 7 million tons of Allied shipping went to the bottom of Daisy Jones' locker. This ship behind me, the Lane Victory, is the only victory ship left in the world of her kind, and she's a living testament and memorial to all those sailors. Come with me now as we take a voyage of discovery and a voyage that recreates portions of a World War II convoy. It may very well be the most exciting one-day voyage you've ever taken. We're talking with Clint Johnson, who was actually one of the founders and prime movers of this ship, the Lane Victory. But Clint, tell us what your job is now.
Well, I'm sort of a roving ambassador.
Okay.
I guess I'm vice president of the organization currently, and unfortunately I'm one of the last of the people that got this thing started because of our age. They've all
Passed on to that.
passed on.
Yeah.
The big place.
Okay. What about, I've seen quite a lot of young people on this ship today, teenagers. What sort of reasons do you think young people should come on the ship for?
Well, I think the historic aspect, but the idea that this is a ship that served in World War II, the Korean War and the Vietnam War, and it's still running, and young people can come down here and volunteer and learn what we do, and this is really where we're getting the replacement crews for our old guys that can't do this, because this ship will be around here another 30, 40 years.
Oh, I went to sea for over 50 years.
I guess one thing that I notice about this ship, you know, with ships today, cruise ships, everything is automated and computerized. And here it's practically like it was, you know, I don't want to say 100 years ago, but a long time ago.
Well, it's over 60 years old, this ship, and yes, everything is original here except for the radars, which are naturally weren't available when this ship was new. So.
And I see the helmsman there is steering the ship. I've been on some cruise ships, and the wheel on a lot of cruise ships today are so small you could almost fit them in your hand.
Well, this is all hydraulic. This is all hydraulic, and all the modern ships are all electric. And so they're much different, much different.
William, how old are you?
16.
What? 16? How do you feel to be driving a ship like this?
A little nervous, but confident.
What would you like to be doing later on in life?
Coast Guard.
Doing what?
Rescue swimmer.
Talk a little bit.
The armed guard were a key part of all the American merchant marine, but I think what a lot of people don't understand or know is that the armed guard was a separate part of the American Navy. Could you, first of all, what is your name, sir?
My name is Charles Savona. I'm the gunnery officer on the ship.
And what was the position of the armed guard in World War II?
The position of the armed guard was to protect the ship, crew, and the personnel, the crew, and the cargo. We went to gunnery school, and we were trained on all these guns. So we were well qualified when we got aboard a merchant ship like this.
Talking about artillery, this huge gun behind us, could you tell us a little bit about it?
Yes, this is a 5-inch 38 caliber gun, and it took 11 men to operate this gun during World War II. And it was hydraulically operated and electrically.
These shells down here on the ground, they're very, very heavy. Is that what the gun fired?
Yes, it was similar to that. They're dummies, by the way, and they each weigh 55 pounds.
I guess from what I know about World War II, being the armed guard on a ship like this was a very, very dangerous job.
It was a very dangerous job, and you never knew when enemy submarine would come in view and fire a couple of torpedoes at your ship, or you would have an enemy air attack, either German or the kamikaze planes out in the South Pacific.
What is the most difficult part of your job?
You know, maintaining automation that we have on here. That's about it.
When a ship like this was torpedoed, how difficult was it to get out?
Very difficult, especially when you're down in the engine room, but depends on where the ship was hit. If it was hit in the engine room, you're all dead, so forget it. If you were hit by the bow or the stern, when the captain said, get off, abandon ship, we'd just go up the ladder and get off.
How much fuel does this ship use an hour?
About 125 gallons. That would be a day.
Clint, how many ships were built? And I know at the peak, Victory and Liberty ships, which was similar to this, didn't they turn them out like almost one a day?
Oh yeah, they're probably more than one a day. In the Victory ships, which came on later in World War II, there was over 500 built. And Liberty ships, there was 2,700 built. But this ship came on later during World War II because it was faster, much faster, and a better ship. And as we caught up what was needed, then they started building the Victory ships. And when they dropped the bomb, and a second bomb, I can just imagine the admirals, the people building these ships said, stop building the ships, we don't need any more, the war is over.
If you think about workmanship and the fact that these ships were built in 1943, 44, 45, that says a lot about American workmanship. I mean, here we are, you know, all those years later, and it's still going strong.
Right, and down in our forward museum, we have a picture. This was built in Cal's ship just about 2 miles from where the Lane Victory's berth is, and it's full of pictures of women, because women were the ones building these ships. Not all women, but the women were the ones that made this possible.
Rosie the Riveter.
Rosie the Riveter, and this wasn't even riveted, this is welded. The Liberty ships were riveted. So it's the women that have got to be given the credit, and they also built the airplanes.
For another take on the Lane Victory and some of the many wonderful things that happened on this ship, let me turn this over down to my colleague, Robert Doddy. Over to you, Robert.
NA. Now this is differential GPS. This is a differential GPS beacon.
Were you one of the armed guards that served on ships during World War II?
Yes, I was on the Cuba Victory.
And tell us a little bit about what the armed guards actually did.
Well, the armed guard in the beginning was a volunteer group, and then after they just picked you out. It was mostly young men with good eyes and good teeth and good physical condition.
Well, I can understand the eyes because you got to see the enemy to shoot at them. Was it good teeth just to show that you were healthy?
Yeah, they well, these ships didn't have a doctor and that, so if there was any big dental work or that, they would have to wait until you got to a big naval facility.
Very good. Do you know if from your ship any of the kamikazes were shot down?
Well, this you don't know. Everybody is firing, and So whoever is the admiral gets credit. This is a 3-inch 50 caliber dual-purpose gun, which is anti-aircraft and bombardment. This is the shell. This is the shell for the 3-inch 50. It's in the fuse setter, which would turn and set the fuse. The smaller the number, the sooner the fuse explodes. The trainer would sit over here, and he would raise and lower the gun on these and also fire the gun. The trainer would be on the other side, and he would raise and he would turn the gun east and west. So they would work together, and the sight setter would stand here, and he would turn those two black knobs for the direction that gunnery officer on the bridge would say. And the gun captain would be on the other side, and the hot shellman would be behind the gun to catch the shells when the gun is fired.
Wow, it's heavy. And it's empty.
It's empty.
And it's that heavy, my goodness sakes.
And the shells, when they're fired, come out hot and fast. The hot shellman has asbestos gloves on, and so that helps a little, though. Not so hot.
What does he do with the shells? Just throw them
We just
overboard?
throw them overboard because there wasn't that many for us. The destroyers, Navy ships, they would save them.
How many rounds per minute or per hour?
Well, you could fire this gun as fast as you unloaded it, and then put another shell in. All depends on how scared you are.
Well, we're speaking with Gene Allen, who is the today's cruise was the man who oiled the engine that we see running in the background. Mr. Allen, I wonder if you tell us a little bit about the engine and about how you keep it running.
Well, this particular engine is typical of the 1930s period marine steam engine. It was built in Moss, Norway in 1935. It went into a whale killer ship that operated in the Antarctic during the whale season. In 1965, the ship was scrapped in Vancouver, BC, and the Fox movie people bought the engine and transported it to Hollywood and used it in the engine room set for the movie Sand Pebbles with Steve McQueen and Candice Bergen. After the movie, it was down to a man in San Diego, and he had it in his backyard for 35 years. He then donated it to the ship, and another man and I restored the engine, put on an electric drive so that we could show the engine off how one of these engines actually operates. And it's a typical, what's called a triple expansion marine steam engine. The steam is expanded 3 times before it's exhausted out of the engine with 900 horsepower. And it's just typical of the 1930s period. Most of them were gone by 1960, converted to diesel or scrap. It's all hand oiled. The oiler had to make the rounds every half hour or 45 minutes according to the engineer on duty. And he'd go around and he'd feel the engine to see if parts were getting hot. In other words, he'd reach in there and he'd feel those bearings as it went around. I can do it for you if you want me to.
That looks kind of dangerous, is it?
No, you just got to remember what you're doing. You keep the camera in, I can show you how it's done.
Yeah, if you would, we'd appreciate that. He's feeling it to see if it's getting hot, and you notice very carefully. And even reaching down.
If he had nice clean oil on his fingers, he knew everything was all right. If he got dirty oil and the thing felt hot, he knew it was time to do something. And that's basically why the engines were gone. They were labor-intensive engines. They were sturdy, good, strong engines.
but they were labor intensive, so they were finally phased out by diesels.
And if you had to do something, it was basically just putting oil, fresh oil in, is that right?
Yeah, it had to keep the clearances on the bearings properly, and as long as you kept the clearances properly, oil, the engine would run indefinitely. In fact, some of these engines probably outlived 3 different ships. And the only reason that it didn't go any farther is they were changed over to diesels. Anyway, that's kind of what it's all about.
Well, this was used in the movie The Sand Pebbles, which was about a coastal patrol boat, basically. Was this the kind of engine they would have used, or would they have had something smaller?
No, this would be typical of the engine in that patrol boat. They were a fairly good-sized patrol boat. And actually, when the movie was made, they did find a patrol boat to use for the movie, but it had been dieselized. And that's why they went to the studio setup to do the engine room scenes.
Well, I'm sitting on a Mark 37 torpedo that's a Cold War weapon, but torpedoes have been around since 1860s. Robert Whitehead invented them. In their original incarnation, they were spindly, riveted Victorian monsters. They looked as evil as their function, and they were lucky to go half a mile. By the turn of the century, they had become such a threat that a new class of ship was invented, the torpedo boat, and this forced navies to back off with long-range gunnery. Also inspired the dreadnoughts, the all-big gun principle of the ship, because you had to stay out of range of torpedoes. In fact, they were so dangerous that an entire class of ship was developed to counter the torpedo boat destroyer. We've since shortened this to destroyer. After the war, torpedoes became super-guided, computerized weapons. Some of them will run 60 miles today. Some of them will trail 20 miles of cable and become remote sensors for submarines.
How did you find out about this and get involved with Elaine Victory?
Well, all right. One of her sister's friends, Bo, his dad started this whole thing. You probably see him dancing around like a madman. His name's Cornell. He pretty much told us to come on board and dance with them. We both have some pretty good partner dancing background between the both of us.
So we just decided to come do it, and it's been really fun, so we stick with it.
And we've obviously, the audience has enjoyed it, and you've enjoyed dancing on board ship, huh?
Yes, oh, it's been so much fun. A little difficult with the rocking back and forth, but we managed.
The Victory ships are faster and larger, and they hold more tonnage, supplies. But the Victory ships were built towards the end of the war.
I think you just told me incredibly that you sailed on these in World War II?
I joined the Navy in 1942 at the age of 15, but fortunately my neighbor found out and told my parents, "Why is your son going in the Navy? He's only 15 years old." Well, they went down to the recruiting office and told him, "How come you're taking my son? He's only 15. Well, I lied my age. I made myself 3 years older. So they found out, they made a background check, and they found out, and they kicked me out. So I turned around and joined the Merchant Marine.
What did you do in the Merchant Marine?
I was a deckhand, ordinary seaman.
And did you actually sail in any convoys?
I got torpedoed twice.
You got torpedoed?
Twice. Once in the Mediterranean and once in the North Atlantic.
When the ship, I guess obviously the ship sank, did you imagine or think that you would be saved? And if you were saved, how were you saved?
The British destroyer picked us up and brought us to England, and we waited there about a couple of months before we got another ship.
From the time you were torpedoed, from the time the British ship picked you up, how long were you in the water?
About 14, 15 hours.
Did you think you were going to die?
Well, I never thought of that then. I was too young and too foolish.
I guess that's why wars are fought by young people.
Well, you know, that's why they want youngsters, because they don't know any better.
Seen my little woman lying there. She was laid down on a long white table. So young, so cold, so fair. Ooh, the way God bless her down. Wherever she might be, she traveled, 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 traveled this wide world all over and never find another man like me. Tell me, boys.
Okay, we're pulling into San Pedro now, and I said at the front of this voyage that this may be one of the most exciting one-day voyages you'd ever taken. I hope you'll agree with me that that is indeed what it was, one of the most exciting cruises you've ever experienced. Until next time, this is John Clayton. I'll see you later.